busting up all those plateaus today. Yeah. So, we'll start with the fitness stuff. All right. One of the really common thing that happens to you, you're just getting started in a fitness routine. Tell me if this has ever happened to you before. You get started in a fitness routine, something new, and the first week you feel sore, you feel run down, you feel like, I can't believe I'm working this hard, everything is so hard. Week 2, it gets a little bit better, it's still hard. Weeks 3, 4, you feel like you're just barely starting to get your groove on. Weeks 5 and 6, you're like, yes, I've got this. And then maybe you keep making progress for another 6, 12 weeks, something like that. But then the magic that you experienced early on in that program, the rapid changes to your strength, to your body composition, all those kinds of things, they start to kind of peter off a little bit. Now, this is pretty normal. When somebody first starts a strength training program, they get rapid strength gains in their first 6 to 12 weeks. And that is because you are making a lot of brand new neurological connections. In other words, the connection between your brain and the muscle fibers themselves. For any of you who were maybe not jocks in high school, self included, who went into fitness later in life, maybe you remember the first time you decided, or the first time in a while, maybe you decided to try doing a push-up, a chest press, or a bench press, and felt like your arms were made up of like noodly spaghetti things, and you didn't feel like you had control over the movement, but over time that got better really, really fast. That's mostly those neurological connections happening, right? So you get a lot of strength gains just from the nervous system sort of reigniting and being attached to the muscles that are working, which is super exciting and super thrilling when you are first getting started out in a program, in a fitness program, that kind of stuff. But after a little while, that will start to plateau a bit. Now, the longer you train, the harder it is to break up a plateau. But we are going to be talking about sort of plateaus when you're just beyond beginner, okay? Busting up plateaus for people who are later in their strength training, like multiple years down the road of their strength training, it's going to be some of the same principles, but a little bit more nuanced. So we're just going to talk about, in general, breaking up a plateau. Maybe you're still in your first year of doing a strength training program. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. Now, one way is to change up what you're doing with the exercise selection, right? Sometimes just introducing a novel movement, a new movement, will actually do the trick to break up the plateau. Sometimes you have to train in a different rep range than what you've been training. So just recently we talked about on a live different rep ranges, is how many reps you use for strength versus hypertrophy versus endurance type goals. So even if you have strength goals, maybe you take a break from strength and you work in that endurance range for a while and then come back to it. So breaking up the monotony of whatever you're doing can have some benefits. But I think probably more importantly, the thing to ask yourself if you're hitting a plateau and you're just not seeing the improvement, and first of all, you have to make sure that you're actually not seeing that improvement. And what I mean by that is make sure it's objective, not subjective. So if you haven't been journaling, for example, so if you've been doing your strength training and you're like, man, I feel like I'm just not making any progress, before you go and try to change a whole bunch of things, start journaling your progress, okay? How many reps? How many sets? What was the weight used? What was your time under tension or your tempo? All of the different things that you're using to make those reps harder or easier. Make note of that along your journey and do some journaling for at least 6 weeks. If you haven't done journaling for at least 6 weeks, you really don't know if you're making steady progress or not. Now, you're never going to have as rapid a progress as when you very first start out a strength program, but you may still be making good, steady progress. And if you are, there's no reason to change anything yet. However, if you're noticing a plateau or even a decline, which does happen from time to time and is absolutely maddening, I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions. Number 1, am I working too hard? Number 2, am I working not hard enough? Okay, so both of these can be a cause for a plateau. So for somebody who's working too hard, maybe they're like super dedicated. They're like, yeah, I crush it at the gym every day. Maybe if you're the type of person who like gets that big endorphin rush from a really freaking killer workout, and you just like hammer it out every single day, and you're just like, yeah, I'll, sleep when I'm dead kind of vibes, right? You may, if you're plateauing, even though you're working really, really hard to capacity, if you're plateauing, and especially if you're declining in your strength gains or your performance gains, you might need to schedule some rest in. I hate to tell it to you. I know that's probably the last thing you want to do if you're in that mindset, especially if you feel like it was that mindset that got you that far. And if you take a day off, the whole thing's going to come crumbling down. It's a legit concern, I feel you, but also you do have to find a way to schedule those rest days in there or those lower intensity days in there, right? So you don't have to do like full on heavy duty strength training every single day. And in fact, your body really needs recovery time. Make sure that you get that recovery time built in. So that's one way that we can plateau, is if we're over exerting ourselves really consistently over a really long period of time. The other thing that can happen is if we kind of went the other route, if things started getting kind of easy. And by easy, I don't want to say like, oh yeah, you're not working hard enough, that kind of thing. You may feel like you're still working hard, right? But you might be just kind of working just not quite hard enough. In other words, you may have found that sweet spot where you do get a good feeling after you're done working out, but you're not really pushing yourself to the limits ever, right? If we're always staying below what we're actually capable of, our body will kind of meet us there, right? The body it's supposed to be lazy. Okay, that is how we have survived. The body will always tend toward lazy, in that your body's going to naturally want to conserve energy, naturally want to conserve calories. So when I say that you may have gotten lazy, this is not like a judgment value against you as a person. This is just your body kind of doing what it was meant to do, which is fine, except for when we do actually want to make forward progress with our strength gains, with our body composition goals. So there's nothing wrong with a plateau if it's intentional. There's nothing wrong with a plateau if that's where you're happy being. But if you're ready to push it to the next level, the optimal word here may be push. If you found your sort of happy medium, you've been working out the same, 3 days per week, 20, 60 minutes per day for a while, and you feel like, yeah, I work out hard, but I'm not like, trashed at the end of it, right? And you may need to just take a step back, take a look at how intense you're working. Take a look at that RPE. We talked about the RPE chart in recent episodes here, and if you're a member of the Nerd Gym, that rate of perceived exertion chart shows up frequently, which is a good indicator for cardio, little not so much for your strength training. But if you're not sure if you're working to capacity, if it's cardio or endurance that you're working on, go by that RPE chart or get a heart rate monitor for an even more objective idea of if you are working at capacity or not, if you're working close enough to that maximum heart rate. This is where math can really come in handy. The boring math stuff can really come in handy for finding out where we are at with busting up our plateaus. So, for example, if you are doing strength training, you do that formula that we did yesterday in our live, which is calculating your 1 rep max, and then going based off a percentage of that for your program. This way, it's not subjective. You're not like, oh, this feels heavy. It's objective, like, no, you did the testing, and what is actually heavy for you, even though the weight that was 20 pounds lighter felt heavy, this is the actual weight for you, right? Likewise with the RPE versus doing a heart rate monitor, you can actually say, okay, I want to work out at 85% of my maximum heart rate for the high intensity interval training. Am I actually there, or does it just feel really hard, right? So taking the journal, taking the time to do the journal, to do the math to find out your estimated 1 rep max, to finding out what your estimated max heart rate is and tracking that. All of these things can be useful tools for busting up a plateau if you're in that situation. It's not necessarily the kind of thing that I recommend everybody do. A lot of the people I work with, the only thing they want is to feel better. And honestly, exercise can do that. The Nerd Gym program is designed for that. Not all programs are designed for that, but like, you give me 20 minutes, you're gonna feel good. You give me 40 minutes, you're gonna feel great. You give me 60 minutes, you're gonna feel legendary. That is why we have our workout programs broken up into 20, 40, and 60-minute long increments, depending on what kind of time you have available, right? So there's nothing wrong with exercising just for the feels, just to feel better. Hell, we can all use to feel a little bit better in 2020, am I right? So exercising for the feels, totally cool. But if you are at a point where you're like, I want progress, and the progress is not going the way you wanted, not the way you planned, these are ways in which you can find out, number one, are you actually not making progress? Number two, how do I actually move on from here and make forward progress? So take the metrics, do the measurements, do the journaling, find out your estimated 1 rep max, calculate your maximum heart rate, get a heart rate monitor if you're doing endurance type goals. So all of these super important for busting up a plateau when it comes to strength and or endurance / cardio training. If you're going in for nutrition plateaus, let's talk about nutrition plateaus next. So that's what we just talked about. That was looking at our strength and or endurance, our physical exercise fitness plateaus. To bust them up, first measure, second, do something different. If you are already exercising really intensely, find a way to take breaks, lower the intensity, okay? If you're not quite exercising hard enough, find ways to increase the intensity, okay? So those are the two big reasons why somebody will hit a plateau with exercise. Either they're not exercising hard enough or they're exercising too hard, okay? This is why, if you're confused about all this stuff, like, hey, hit me up. I'm available for you every single day. I've got live streams going every day, as well as I'm open for Q&A after every class. If you're a member of the Nerd Gym, 2-3 times a day, I'm there for you. Okay, we'll do it up. So that was for exercise. Let's talk nutrition. Okay, so nutrition plateaus usually happen for, again, one of two reasons. Either you're getting too many calories or not enough calories over a really long period of time. So when we're talking about nutrition plateaus, I'm going to talk specifically about weight loss just because that's what most people come to me for. I don't want you to feel left out if you're on a mass gain or if you're looking to gain weight. If you're looking to gain weight, I am totally happy to help you out with those questions. In general, it's just a matter of getting more calories into the body and finding efficient ways to do that. So if you're in that situation, please don't feel left out of the conversation here. We can totally talk about that at another time. You're welcome to hit me up. But right now, let's talk about fat loss plateaus, weight loss plateaus. So let's start with the one that is less talked about but still pretty common, and that is not enough calories over a prolonged period of time. Not enough calories over a prolonged period of time. In general, when people hit a weight loss or fat loss plateau, they usually, again, haven't kept real good records of what they've been doing. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So the first step in finding out what the reason for your plateau is the exact same thing that I recommended for the strength training, which is you journal, okay? If somebody's hit a plateau with their nutrition, I recommend you do a food journal, what you ate, how many calories it was, and ideally also macronutrient breakdown, the amount of protein, fat, and carbohydrate. So you do that for at least, like a good chunk of time, minimum 1 week, bare minimum 1 week for the nutrition stuff. For the exercise stuff, I would say minimum 6 weeks, Nutrition stuff, bare minimum, 1 full week, complete week, every single meal. Write it down, detail it out. How many calories, protein, fat, carbohydrate. I like doing an old school written journal, but MyFitnessPal is an app that has one of those databases attached to it. So the databases are really useful so that you don't have to like look it up on your PC later on. So if you have done that and you are aware of how many calories you ought to be getting for fat loss for you, okay, so here's the simple formula. If you are totally sedentary and you don't have a lot of base muscle mass and you want to lose fat, you take your estimated normal body weight. I'm doing air quotes because everybody likes a different amount of fat on them, okay? I'm not saying you have to be stuck in that BMI chart, especially since the BMI is not accurate for people who are exercising. But say, for example, you're like, okay, I'm 5'5", I'm going to look at the BMI chart, body mass index chart, for a starting weight for healthy normal. And it says I should be like around 130 pounds. Okay, 130 pounds. If I'm totally sedentary, multiply that by 10. 1,300 calories is approximately what I should be getting for fat loss. Okay? If I'm a little bit more than sedentary, like I'm getting some exercise or I have some base of muscle mass, times 11. And then for incremental goals upwards, times 12, 13, 14, depending. And if you're not sure, again, if you're a member of the Nerd Gym, I've got all that information for you. If you want me to guide you to it, because I know we've got a lot on the website, I'll be happy to guide you to where that information is. But once you know, okay, this is how many calories I've been taking in for the past week per day on average. This is how many calories I should be getting for fat loss. Now, one of two things are going to happen. You're going to look at the calories you've been taking in, and they're going to be either below, at, or above the number that you're supposed to be at. If you have hit a plateau and the number of calories you've been taking in are at or below the number that is estimated you need for fat loss, like let's say, okay, my BMI, multiply by 10, I'm sedentary, 1,300 calories, that's what I should be taking in for fat loss. How many calories I've been getting in? 12 to 1,300, and I'm plateauing. It is time to break up that plateau by eating more calories for a little while. And I know this is one of those things that a lot of people who have been dieting for a long time really hate to hear, okay? If you've been dieting for a really long period of time and you're like, man, I want to lose this last little bit of weight, but it just won't come off, they keep cutting and cutting and cutting calories and nothing happens. I've seen people go down to like 800-900 calories and still be at that plateau, which sucks for so many reasons. Number one, your body's going to start catabolizing the muscle tissue, which is going to lower your base level metabolism. Your metabolism is going to go like in the tank. If you feel like cold when it's hot out, that kind of stuff, you likely have tanked your metabolism a bit. So the way out of that, unfortunately, I say unfortunately because it's the thing I get the most pushback on people who are in this situation, you have to take a break from trying to lose fat. You have to add some calories and you have to get more sleep. Most of the time when somebody's in this situation, they are stressed out, they are not sleeping, they are not paying attention to the self-care aspect of things. And when your body's that stressed out, it will just keep hoarding fat. It will just hold on to whatever it can. So if you're in that situation, you have to, number one, gradually increase the calories. I'm not saying like to all of a sudden dump like, 2,000 calories if you've been down below like 1,200, but gradually like, a couple hundred calories a week, gradually increase it. And as you increase your calories, also gradually increase your sleep and your activity. And if you do all of those three things, if you've been at a really low calorie count and plateauing, and you gradually increase the calories, increase your activity level, and increase your sleep and your recovery time, you may lose fat. And it's happened a lot, but not always. Okay, so I give no guarantees here, but you may lose fat while adding more calories. Sometimes it happens during this process. Sometimes it happens after this process. In other words, we have to get ourselves back up both energy-wise and calorie-wise to at least 500 calories over where we ought to be for fat loss according to the numbers we crunched at the beginning of this whole thing. And then once you're there, like let's say I was supposed to get like 1,300 calories for fat loss. I want to get myself back up to at least 1,800 calories and more physical activity as well as more sleep. And if I still haven't lost fat, or if I've gained back some fat, then all I have to do is drop down to 1,500 calories. Not all the way down to 1,300 calories, down to 1,500 calories. And when I do that, then the magic happens. Then the weight loss comes again. But this has to be done gradually over the course of weeks. So you can't just do it like, oh, I'm going to eat 2,000 calories one day and then re-diet down the next. Doesn't work that way. You have to look at it like, I'm going to add 100 calories a week until I'm back up to at least 500 over, at least minimum 500 over where I ought to be for fat loss, and then I'm going to drop 300 after that. So it's a 5-week up, 1 week drop down 300, and as long as you're making progress, you stay there. And it can be slow progress. Don't be down on yourself about slow progress when it comes to fat loss. Yes, can we do programs where people lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks of actual fat? Yes, we can. That's usually like in the first 6 weeks of somebody's training, we can pull that off. Afterwards, 1 to 2 pounds per week for fat loss is good. That's good. So, and don't only go by the scale, also go by circumference measurements, because especially if you're doing strength training, this is another thing. If you think you have plateaued on your fat loss and you're doing strength training, you better darn well be taking circumference measurements, not just weight on the scale, because muscle is denser than fat. And especially with people who start off at a relatively low body weight, if they start doing strength training, it is super common for the waistline to shrink in and the weight on the scale to go up. Okay? So it's really common for that to happen. So we want to make sure that we are not only tracking weight on the scale, but also circumference measurements with a tailor's measuring tape as well. Now, if you have, that's for people who are either doing strength training and or who have, and we just talked about busting a plateau for people who have been under eating their calories, right? What happens if the other thing happens? If you look at your calorie count for the past week and you say, man, I'm way over. Why am I over? That's when it's useful to know how much protein, fat, and carbohydrate you're getting. Because with the fat, especially, you got 9 calories per gram in your fat versus 4 calories per gram in your protein and your carbohydrate. Usually, as long as we're not cutting too low, usually we can cut out a good chunk of calories by just reducing the fat a little bit, okay? And this is why I tend to prefer for most people, not all people, but a relatively low-ish fat diet. Fat is important. You don't want to cut it out completely, but a low-ish fat diet with moderate amounts of protein and carbohydrate, because it's going to have enough volume where you're going to feel some satiety. One of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of keto, though it does work for some people, I get that. I'm not anti-keto, but one of the reasons why it doesn't work for a lot of people is because you're getting so much caloric density in the high fat part of it that it's very easy to go over calories. So a lot of people think that they're going to lose weight on a keto diet just by cutting out all the carbs, and maybe they do for a very short time initially, but unless they're actually counting calories and make sure they're not going over in their calories, it's very easy to go over when all you're eating is fat and a little bit of protein. So as a fat loss diet, I rate it kind of meh. All right, so yes, breaking up the plateau on the strength training, you either need to rest more or you need to work more. Breaking up the plateau on your fat loss, you either need to add calories or you need to reduce calories, okay? Or you need to add and then reduce, depending on what's going on. So yeah, I hope that this gets you thinking a little bit. If you're in one of these situations where you are stuck, where you do need help, reach out for help. Let me know. We'll fast track you through the process, and you don't have to muck through all of my lives that I've done over the past 2 weeks to figure it out on your own. You just let me know. Sign up for the Nerd Gym, www.thenerdgym.com, and I will get you squared away with the membership that is right for you, and we will get you fast-tracked to the information you need to make all the good progress and feel better every step of the way. Feel good while you're getting fit and healthy. Not only just like after you get fit and healthy, but while you're getting fit and healthy. Super important. Okay, so until next time, friends, have an awesome day, and I will see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock on my next live.